and
Yes.
for my friends in Rotary. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce Madhav Mohan to this very special audience on a very special topic. In fact, right from the morning, I've been working on how to introduce him. I've been trying to figure out how to introduce Madhav Mohan. I have had uh, opportunities in the past to introduce him, and I've had his bio sketch with me. But finally, I decided to cast them aside. And as I had told Aslam, I would speak more about what I know about him than what is covered in the bio sketch. And I'm afraid it's going to be a fairly lengthy introduction, but certainly not as lengthy as the introduction that a British Prime Minister got in the 1920s. He himself was a man of very few words, and he went in telling them that he had another meeting to attend soon after this. And the introduction went on for 20 to 25 minutes. And at the end of it, he was asked to give his address. And he got up, looked at his watch, and said, "My address is number 10 Downing Street," and sat down. Now, that won't happen here, I can assure you. It won't be as lengthy, but I won't be doing justice to him unless I highlight the importance of Madhav Mohan and the relevance of Madhav Mohan to today's topic and to Rotary in general. I cannot, of course, help mentioning before that Madhav is a multifaceted personality, an educationist, a scholar who has written several articles, his regular column in Hindu Business Line, a book called Lonely at the Top, and several lectures, thousands of lectures to varied audiences. An educationist who was intimately involved in the establishment and development of an educational institution, a management institute, a mentor and developer of men, of CEOs, of leaders, of individuals, of sports persons, of varied types of persons. And I know from my own experience, this would not be covered in any resume, but I have seen him in action. And there have been occasions when he, as he believes in doing, he continually challenges people and challenges himself also, and challenges to achieve new goals and new heights of educational endeavor. I remember students in Vapi, half of whom could not even converse in English, could not understand English, and they were put to task, given articles. You won't believe it, but I've seen it for myself. Articles from the Harvard Business Review, and they were asked to read them and make presentations. And they used to sit till 3 o'clock in the morning, and just it's an amazing feat. At the end of a 2-week period, you could see the transformation in them. It was a kind of a transformational change. And at the end of it, you could see them going and falling at his feet and seeking his blessings. That's the kind of person that he is. He's more than a mentor, he's a developer of men. I've also seen the cases like, I mean, they may sound isolated instances, but they are not. There was a librarian who could not converse in English, and that was his main handicap. He had the urge to develop himself, and Madhav made him promise that he will speak only in English. And he left us, he joined a medical college library, and today he has not only done his PhD, but he is I don't know whether Madhav knows this, he is the convener of the Library Association of the whole state. And he keeps on writing to me. And I'm sure he wishes Madhav on his birthday also. A man who has gone up the ladder all by his own efforts, but there was someone to advise him, someone to prod him, someone to drive him into a new being that he has become today. Madhav is an entrepreneur, the first IT entrepreneur in Kerala, at least. and a pioneer in IT education, which has stood him in good stead in Rotary later on in the projects that he has himself championed. He's a sports person. I don't think most of you know that he was national level junior tennis player and state level champion. Also trained in martial arts in karate. He is, of course, um, uh, also a developer of men, of students. He, above all, of course, is a Rotarian to us. And it is as a Rotarian that he comes to us today. His association with the Rotary started before he joined Rotary. And when he went as a Rotary ambassadorial scholar to Thunderbird University and did his master's in international management. But he was one of the few ambassadorial scholars who returned to India, and soon after returning to India, joined the Rotary. And he's been in Rotary ever since, I think for more than 30 years, 30 or 35 years, with the Rotary Club of Cochin. He's also been a past president. Now, he has served as a mentor to several RI presidents, and he has also been an advisor to the Strategy Planning Committee of RI International at Evanston. And that is an opportunity that he has used in developing in RI a vision, a view of certain very important international projects that have been carried out in the last few years. His concept paper was the basis for the Colombo conference that was held by the RI president in 2011-12. His paper and ideas were the cornerstone of the Rotary Literary Mission Project. I have with me a paper that he had written in 2016, not recently, in 2016, a paper that he had prepared for the Strategy Planning Committee of RI. And some of the things that he has said there are of direct import, of direct relevance to today's meeting. And this is what I'd like to focus on, if I may take 3 or 4 minutes. One of the things that he recommended was a study of the polio experience that Rotary has had and the lessons that had been learned from the polio experience and the implications, and I'm quoting him, his own words, the implications of the polio experience for global health issues and disease control. Global health issues and disease control long before the pandemic hit us. And that study, if that had been done, would probably have seen us in a much more agile state and in a state where we could respond, develop even better rapid response systems. The second point that he had stressed in that note was that real-time video conferencing should be the basis for the majority of meetings in Rotary. Again, but for the pandemic, I think this would not have gained the sense of urgency that it has gained today. The third thing, and there are many things, but I'm just focusing on 2 or 3. Third thing that caught my attention and which I think is of direct relevance to us here is that a global IT strategy blueprint should be prepared for Rotary, and this should be used for improving Rotary's communication networks and for even looking at the entire functioning of Rotary at all levels, district, national, and international. And the fourth thing, which again is to me very important, is that a zero-based evaluation of the Rotary structure and functioning should be undertaken. Now, this pandemic has been more disruptive than anything that we have witnessed in the last few centuries. It's been much more disruptive than most of us think. What does it do to Rotary? How do we transform ourselves? What does this mean to Rotary in the pandemic? It's against this background of these prime concerns that all of us have, that we have Madhav Mohan to talk to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Madhav Mohan.
President Dr. Manoj Patel, Secretary Hima Dalal, Program Chair Ashok Deora, and venerated Professor KCR Raja. I am speechless given the introduction that Professor Raja just delivered. And oh my God, he has set the bar so high that I think I'm going to kill myself trying to reach the bar. Professor Raja is an iconic figure, not just for Rotarians, but also for millions of students and anybody who seeks a model of a life of probity, learning, humility, and above all, dignity and grace. And I have been truly, truly privileged to work under his towering presence. And I've been enriched beyond measure. Thank you, Professor Raja, for all you said and for all you have done for me, with me, as you and I have been co-conspirators in many, many projects over the last 25 odd years. Thank you. It's a great privilege to be this evening to share a few thoughts with all of you. It's been my great honor to have visited your club on several occasions in the past. I remember a half-day leadership program we did when Governor Bal Inamdar was about to be taking office. I think he was DGN and or DGE, DGN, I think. So we did a leadership program for all the office bearers just prior to his taking of office. Subsequently, I remember coming to your club when you were felicitating Professor Raja. I was there when Dr. Marshalkar delivered the first Kalyan Banerjee lecture. So your club is a wonderful club, and it's been a great pleasure and privilege for me to be part of several of your meetings. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I'm wondering whether you all can hear me. I'm about
Yes,
to.
we can hear.
Right. I am going to try and share my screen in a couple of moments. But before that, let me just walk you through what I intend to do today. I thought I'll share a few thoughts. And my approach is going to be mostly conceptual. I'd like to talk about the background of our scenario today, and from a macro perspective, look at Rotary. And then from there, hopefully zoom in a little bit on the micro perspective of Rotary at the club level. And then, if you will permit me, we'll attempt to do a real-time informal survey, if that is all right with all of you. I have just 5 questions, but very provocative questions. And I will share the analysis on screen in real time with all of you as they come in. So at the end of my talk, I'll run the survey by placing a link in the chat box. And if you click the link, you can go straight to the survey, and then we'll talk around it if you like. And I'll invite Professor Raja to join me in interpreting the scores as they come in. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, let me just share the screen. And please do give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Great. We are in the pandemic, and we are likely to be for the foreseeable future. There's no getting away from it. So it's a very different world. Let's delve into some of the current realities. Now, you'll notice that I've used the word post-pandemic world order, and there is a reason for that. At the beginning of this whole scary situation in April, I thought, like the Bible says, this too shall pass. Sooner or later, human beings will overcome the pandemic. Sooner or later. And that is how we have got here as a species, overcoming problems. Human beings have this unique ability to solve existential species extinction related problems. So sooner or later, we'll come up with the solution. And so we will enter a post-pandemic order. So right in the beginning, in April, I thought I'll look ahead with the telescope and try to see what that world order might look like. Somewhat like Christopher Columbus standing on the deck of his ship and looking through his telescope at the far shore of a land he thought was India, but was actually the US, and try to see what that land looked like. So this is an attempt to go beyond and see where we might end up. And so I wrote it. It's a very detailed article, and I decided I will not place it on any national publication. Rather, I'll put it on LinkedIn. And as it happens, that was picked up by one of the Malayalam business dailies, and they translated it into Malayalam, and that quickly went viral. So it was quite an amazing turn of events. I never intended it for it to be published in any other language, but then everybody is searching for answers and possibilities. And so that's why I called it the post-pandemic world order. And those of you who are interested can see it on LinkedIn. But the sum total of all that is that the world as we knew it on the 15th of March, 2020, is gone in a puff of smoke. And please, let's understand clearly that it's not coming back. No matter how we may want it to come back, the reality is that all of us are left with nostalgic memories of how life used to be before this period. As somebody said in a very lighter vein, today we have BC and AC, which is before Corona and after Corona. It is a seminal moment in human history. It certainly is an inflection point for the globe. And as the scenario is unfolding, so many things are becoming visible to us. And I don't think any one of us knows what the current scenario is fully, nor what the scenario is going to be in future after the disease has been conquered. So I, with a lot of humility, submit to you that part of what I'm saying is from what I read and understood, and what I think, and part is from a hope that I carry in my heart. So, wishful thinking, perhaps. Be that as it may, let's take a look at some of these aspects very briefly. We know that the Indian economy has contracted by about 24% in the last 12 months. Has contracted. It's not a recession, it's actually shrunk. To me, a recession is actually a slowdown in the rate of growth. But here, this is a very different animal. This is not a recession. This is a shrinkage of the economy. And nobody knows how to deal with it. Don't believe any academic or policymaker, anybody who seems to spew forth wisdom and quote data and research and statistics. They've simply not dealt with or seen anything like this before. It's truly one of those black swan events. Nobody has experience of this. So everybody is feeling around. We haven't slowed down. We have shut down. We've gone to zero. That's why they talk about a V-shaped curve. Okay, we went down to zero and now we are climbing out of the hole. And what that does is shake economic theory and policy to its very foundations, which is why I say that we need to have what I call zero-based economics. That means we have to start economics, policy, theory, and practice with an empty sheet of paper from scratch. Take, for example, index numbers, which is an economic metric. Index numbers are not relevant today because some of the latest indexes have been based on the year 2011 or 2014. They are a benchmark for comparison. But today there are no benchmarks for comparison. So how do you compare the economy today as it was last year? These are not apples to apples comparisons. You know, in business reviews, as Shirish would know, they use this term like to like comparisons. But these are not like to like comparisons, which is why I think we need to redesign economics completely. And who knows, tomorrow we may come up with a new metric and a new definition instead of gross domestic product, GDP. We could come up with something else. And look at the contradiction in terms. Gross. Gross in many ways means heavy, inert, bad, unattractive. Gross domestic product. Maybe we'll come up with exciting human happiness index. Maybe we'll take a leaf out of Bhutan's book of happiness. Who knows? So economics is in shambles in terms of the size of the economies worldwide. All the people who say India is down 24%, to them I say the rest of the world is not any better. They may have reserves, but all those reserves can just disappear very, very quickly. $1 trillion packages can happen in one or two iterations, but beyond that, even the richest of the rich have a certain finite limit to money. That's where we are with economics. When it comes to technology, especially IT technology, the reverse is true. We are in a state of incredible evolution of technology. The speed at which algorithmic AI-based technology is evolving is unbelievable. Projects which were taking 6 and 8 months for approvals are being approved in a matter of hours. Data analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics, and all kinds of substitutions and permutations and combinations are happening vis-a-vis materials, production processes, manufacturing techniques, productivity, all kinds of stuff is happening today. But the real development, I think, the real change is happening in sociology, in the manner in which human beings are relating with each other. And I think there's truly a revolution happening in many directions, most of which is not really understood. Let me share some indices and some broad, directions in which things are going. Look at the lockdown and the impact of the lockdown. People have learned to live with what they have. They've cut down expenses. Those are all the positive things. They spend more time at home. They've got to know their spouses, their family better. Perhaps even nutrition has improved, perhaps, in many households. But at the same time, the number of people who have slipped back into poverty has also increased because income have disappeared, livelihoods have disappeared. So the infant mortality rate we need to look at. That is the number of children dying before the age of 5. Has that increased? We don't know. What about instances of malnutrition? We don't know. We know that domestic violence has gone through the roof. The status of women has taken a huge hit. And relationships between family members, on the surface, great, but what's happening? How is society as a whole emerging and making its way through this pandemic? We really don't know. What about health? For the affluent people, the cliche is that health indicators have improved. People are, suffering less from hypertension, less visits to hospitals. But less visits to hospitals are also because the fear of going to hospital. Has obesity come down? Has alcoholism come down? Has substance abuse come down? We don't know. Maybe there is improvement in sanitation. Maybe public spaces are cleaner because fewer people go there. But we really don't know. What is the impact? Is the life expectancy of the Indian, which was hovering around 72, is it likely to go up or down because of this? What about literacy? South Asia has some 250 million illiterate people. What is the impact of literacy? Or what is the impact of this on literacy? Smartphone penetration has gone up probably to 90 odd, 95 odd percentage. But what's the impact on literacy? The next area that I am really concerned about is what I wrote in the article, the emergence of imperialistic, mercantilistic hegemons. What I meant was China, of course, in April. And that nightmare is unfolding before us. So too, what's happening with dictators and icons? As we talk, one of the longest standing dictators, Alexander Lukashenko in Belarus, is fighting for survival, even though he has the power not just of the Belarusian state, but also the Russian state. In a small country like Russia, with 9 million people, over 100,000 people are coming out on the street every day to protest against him because he's been in power for 26 years. And they're saying enough is enough. Many, many icons are likely to fall. They have been considered paragons of virtue, including former chairman of very great private sector banks, private public sector banks are going to be revealed to have feet of clay. You have bankruptcies and you'll have bandits. larger companies may have reserves, but they too have to service their debt. And if the revenue streams are drying out, how do they service the debt? What about cyber fraud? What about law and order? Now, for example, take Pune, about which there was a news item this morning in a podcast that I listened to. They have about 200,000 cases in Pune, but they've also set up very large hospital to deal with the COVID pandemic. I think they have a hospital which has about 400 or 500 beds. But that hospital had unique problems because they were thrust into the action before the doctors actually got a grip on the whole thing. The facilities were available, but before they could actually lay down processes, 400 patients arrived. And with the patients came the political leaders and people who wanted to get treatment. And there was a law and order problem there too. So what happens when there is a spike and the law and order enforcement machinery is dealing with the spike, dealing with the coronavirus epidemic? What happens to pure law and order? What happens when thousands of under trials and convicts are let out on parole because the prisons have become clusters? What happens when all of them are in the public domain? Even in the US, they are at an inflection point vis-a-vis many hitherto unthinkable areas, like race, for instance. They are at an inflection point today, almost like Martin Luther King's famous march. They're at that tipping point today. But in the middle of all this, I think we are in the burgeoning stages of India's second IT revolution. I think the technology companies and entrepreneurs are shifting away from the old body shopping, call center, even product markets, and quickly getting on to many topical, timely requirements today. So it's already beginning. I think there's a revolution happening in hardware and software. Chip makers, integrated circuit boards, manufacture of computers of all kinds, types. 50 to 60% of the chips in the world are controlled by TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. So is that monopoly kind of a situation going to be broken by India's Atmanirbhar chip manufacturing revolution? Possibly. Maybe in a little more time. So I think India's second IT revolution, you'll remember that the first IT revolution was kicked off in Y2K, year 2000. And now I think the second IT revolution is beginning. And this is going to be India's first innovation revolution. Indian Jugaad has been famous worldwide, but this is now going to the next level. People are coming up with all kinds of solutions. And it's one of those validations of that principle, necessity is the mother of invention. And nobody is better than that than the Indians. The kind of new products, services, solutions that are emerging are unbelievable. You have robotic sanitization dispensers, you have solar power controlled by AI-based, systems. I mean, you would name it, they're coming up with it. There's even a company in Kochi which has won the national innovation competition. They're coming up with an alternative to Zoom. It's already available. It's called Focus. So India's first innovation revolution is truly happening. And I am very hopeful that India's time is now. Even though all the economic pundits, including those in all the leading economic think tanks, are all saying that our GDP is fallen perilously and we are in a crisis. Of course we are. But I think India's time is now. Because as a population, we are a fountainhead of positivity, innovation, can do. We are all problem solvers because in order to survive in our country, you need to solve problems. As I keep telling my friends who live in the US and other parts of the world, when you have 1.2 billion people competing for air, water, gas cylinders, jobs, etc., the competitive edge is honed very sharply, and that tends to play out in incredible innovation. So I think we are in for a very interesting time, but it's going to be painful, and no doubt about it. Loss of incomes, loss of savings, loss of loved ones, all is going to happen. But India, I think, will come out on top. And I'm very sanguine about it because I think we have superb leadership in this country, something that we have been thirsting for over the last 70 years. Which then brings me to Rotary's role in thought leadership. As Rotarians, you and I are all doers. Before we can say Jack Robinson, we have implemented a project. Look at it this way. Every year there is a presidential theme. And in that short 12 months, you have hundreds and thousands of projects aligning with that theme. And people are doing project after project after project. They spring to action. So Rotarians are doers. In fact, this is the reason why we were able to eliminate polio from India. This is why we are among the largest contributors to the TRF. Rotarians are quintessential karma yogis. They are doers. But you know, action is based on thought. Action without thought is a disaster. So I think somewhere all of us in Rotary, even at the district and club levels, have to start thinking about creating think tanks and conducting research, because this is the base on which action and doing project is based. And today there is need for this on a scale that we have never had before. So we need to have some thinking and some funding of thinking, because that is the basis for action. And I think we are not doing enough of that. When it comes to research and thought, Rotarians somehow are very wary. But that is dangerous today because everything has changed. How has it changed? We don't know. How do we know? By studying it. That means research, by thinking about it. So my premise to all of us here today is Rotary's role in thought leadership needs to be looked at very closely. And as Rotarians, I would strongly urge your club and every other club to start investing a little bit in think tanks and research. Now let's look at the macro view at some of the stuff that I've been talking about, which I think are even more relevant today. And these are based on that paper which Professor Raja referred to earlier. First of all, we are in the age of disintermediation. That means the pandemic has forced us to remove middlemen, because technology is what we are depending on. And in any case, even when it comes to food, for example, the farmer from the field is coming and delivering the produce at your home. So all the intermediaries are gone. So we are in the age of disintermediation. That has serious implication for structure. it has serious implications for the way we have organized ourselves into zones, districts, and clubs. I don't think anybody is really seriously thinking about that. Today, we can communicate. Look at me, I'm sitting in Cochin. We are talking to each other. You're all sitting in maybe 100 different locations geographically. I can talk to 1.2 million Rotarians at the same time. And I can have a relationship with 1.2 million Rotarians worldwide. So where is the relevance of geography? Is our zone and district level and club level organization relevant? That's a question we need to think about. Maybe there is a need to cut down the hierarchy. Maybe there's a need for RI headquarters to be re-evaluated to see what value they are contributing. I'll talk about this for a minute. We are all in a democracy. We're all in a democracy. And democracies are the preferred, successful ways in which countries have organized themselves. I mentioned earlier that the dictatorships are falling or are likely to fall like 9 pins. Dictatorship, whether it's in Belarus or in Beijing, I don't think are sustainable. So democratic societies are the societies that are going to become stronger and stronger as days go by. But in Rotary, are we adhering to the fundamentals of democracy? I think it's very important for us to make sure that there is democratic, transparent, collaborative, discussive relationship right down to the individual level. Which then brings me to what I call rota vote. I think there is, if you're going to trickle down democracy, it has to trickle down to every member of every club. And therefore, every Rotarian must have a vote. Every Rotarian must have a vote for any positions. And so one of the things I'm calling for is a rota vote system, not just the electronic vote system that you now have, but a complete, transparent, online, cyber secure voting system for all positions, including governorships. And we have got to eliminate this whole nominating process business. And you and I know that electoral fraud and electoral manipulation is what divides clubs and districts and eats into fellowship. It poisons the environment. It poisons service above self. It poisons the four-way test and cuts at the root of who we are and what we stand for. So there is, I think, a need for this whole rota vote system, which will make sure there is a trickle down in democracy. And then there is a need for what I call GRITS, a global Rotary IT strategy, because we are going to be IT heavy. Every club is on various platforms. There is a need for us to build a robust infrastructure for the organization to go forward, rather than individual clubs experimenting with technology. We need to have some robust backbone, and we need a coherent IT strategy as we go along. There's a need for a Rotary app. Many clubs are doing it. I think Kara is thinking about it now. But these other three things are interesting. I think we should collaborate with Coursera, EDX, Udacity, and other providers of massive online open courses. These are massive online open courses which are available. like EDX, Coursera, Udacity, etc. We should collaborate with them and create powerful training modules. Powerful training modules. We should, I think, go away from sending favorite people to do lectures and do training programs as a preparation for his next step in the Rotary career. We should make leadership training and all aspects of our training thoroughly professional, using collaborative approaches with all these tried and tested service providers, and make this available to the entire Rotary world. So that when it comes to pets, when it comes to district officers training programs, when it comes to president and secretaries training, of course, pets, when it comes to governors training, when it comes to RI officers training, when it comes to assemblies, etc., 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 there is high quality content which helps us all become better Rotarians and better leaders. And for that, we have to get the world's best. There is a need for us to study this pandemic. I called for the polio study, but I think we need to study this from a service and Rotary perspective in depth to come up with our responses properly as an organization. And I think we have to relook at Rotary structure from a zero base. We have to do the zero base exercise to look at Rotary and its structure. And that's what I think we have the opportunity to do now from a macro point of view. But having said that, I think it's time for us to do much better housekeeping in Rotary at the macro level, at the district level, at the club level. And when I say housekeeping, I mean two things: administration and whistleblower program. Administration is easy to understand for presidents, secretaries, and board members. We have got to migrate to a digital system, not just for meetings, but to completely automate all the administrative aspects, a kind of an ERP approach, whether it's on managing meetings online, whether it's managing attendance, dues, financials, contributions, but also member engagement, member contributions to the club and its progress, retention, new member induction, and everything. We need to migrate to a full-fledged digital system. And today, this is all possible without too much money. And I think the sooner we do it at the club level, the better it is for us. But at the same time, we have got to keep stressing stewardship. We have to keep stressing stewardship. Why am I saying that? Take this figure in the middle. Approximately USD 21 million comes into India via global grants every year. That is a lot of money. And where there is money, there is always wrongdoing. That's one of the first things I've learned as a banker. Where there is money, there is always issues relating to it. And so if there are 100 transactions, 1 or 2 transactions can be fraudulent. So frauds are the exception which prove the rule. So if there is a large amount of money involved, stewardship becomes critical. And I don't think we are paying enough attention to stewardship. So this pandemic gives us an opportunity to focus on stewardship and bring in protocols, especially when we automate everything. We got to make sure that monies are received only in one particular account and withdrawals will happen only for designated purposes. And there is an audit trail. There is a concurrent audit, and there are limits, access limits, dispersal limits, all sorts of controls we can build. And we have got to make the system so watertight that we can reduce the incidence of frauds in all the money that comes into Rotary in the execution of projects. You know, recently there was some big issue about how a big industrial house gave a large sum of money to a particular district, and that district unfortunately did not use the money properly. There were allegations that the funds were diverted to some different purposes, and so they were going to organize a committee to inquire into it. I'm just giving an example of how poorly we are looking at stewardship. The people who are appointing the committee are the people who are in the middle of the allegations. So you see, there is a direct conflict of interest. So today, our approach to housekeeping is very, very cavalier, I think. And we have to pay a lot of attention to conflicts of interest and possible leakages. And then I think, considering this huge amount of money, not only through the TRF coming in, but all the projects that we are implementing, we need to have a whistleblower program. We need to have a way of handling complaints. We need to have a way of managing dissent. Because these two are fundamental aspects of a democracy. There will be complaints and there will be dissent. Are we managing that properly? I think we are not. Because the minute we voice, any Rotarian voices an opinion contrary to the leadership, that becomes an issue. Neither the leader nor the Rotarian who is dissenting knows how to manage that dissent in a healthy way. And this is leading to a lot of disputes and shaking us from within. As an organization, we need to mature in the ability to manage complaints and dissent. And therefore, one of the most important ways of doing that is having a very robust whistleblower program. Coming to the micro view of clubs, are clubs relevant today? Is a club relevant? Or should we have a group of 10,000 people together? Now, the argument is, how can you have that? Because how can you have fellowship? Well, today, anyway, there is no physical fellowship, is there? I'm not arguing against a club. I'm just raising a question for us to think. Why should we have a Rotary Club of Cochin, or a Rotary Club of Bombay West, or a Rotary Club of Timbuktu? Where is the importance of geography today? So these throw up interesting questions. I told you I'm going to provoke everyone. Because anyway, we are meeting every week. I'm here, you are there, somebody else is 10,000 miles away. In our last meeting, in one of the last meetings of our club in Cochin, Shweta, you'll remember, there were people who joined from the UK, the US, Nigeria, and Egypt, apart from people from Madras. And this is the only way we are meeting. We are not meeting physically, and this is not going to happen for the foreseeable future. And who knows? It may never happen again. Who knows? I don't know. So I'm just raising this question. I think there's also a great need for training. we need to pay a lot of attention to training our members in the use of technology. There's a great need to retrain our members in their approach to business, because business, as it was happening before, is dead. For example, how do you manage in a cash short environment? Is it better to have a one-time settlement rather than carry an outstanding for 6 months? I mean, these are all the kinds of things that people need to learn to do. Today, they're doing instinctively. They're doing trial and error, but I think there is a need for training. So too in communication and relationships. How do you manage a relationship digitally? But I think we also need to look within our clubs. I can tell you for sure, within our own clubs, there are people who are suffering badly. They're suffering depression. They're suffering breakdown of relationships. They're suffering breakdown and disappearance of incomes. They're suffering from fear, stress. Is there a way we can reach out? How do we do that? Club service needs to be really strong today, I think. And it has to be done in a manner very different from how we used to approach club service. Because today it is a situation where everybody is on the edge. How do we help each other? What are the mechanisms by which we help each other? We also need to help outside. But how are we going to help outside, the community outside, if we don't know what their needs are? So that's why I think it's very important for us to do a community survey, socio-economic, cultural survey, to find out what are the needs. And then we have to develop new funding sources. Okay, the traditional source of getting a few Rotarians together to contribute to run a project or to get a corporate funding sponsorship, that's all gone for the time being. How many global grants will we do? What are the other ways of raising funds? And these are all ideas we need to look at. And then, of course, we have to strengthen the leadership. No two ways about it. No two ways at all about it. When I say leadership, I'm talking about doing the right thing, because Rotary is about doing right, doing what is right. So I want to tell you the story of two top Rotary leaders. I talk about strengthening leadership. Two top Rotary leaders. First is our Rotarian Sushil Gupta, who was appointed as RI President nominee a few years back. You know that he got sick. He got terribly sick. And Rotary and all of us were really deprived of his charismatic leadership as president. But what Sushil did is something for us all to learn. When he saw that he was going to be incapacitated, long before he became incapacitated, he knew that he was going to not be able to hold the position. He resigned. Long before he became that ill, he saw the trajectory and he said, it is not right for me to continue, and therefore I'm stepping down. What a wonderful model of doing the right thing in the saddest of circumstances, in the toughest of circumstances. Here was a great leader who did the right thing. For himself, fine, but more importantly, for the organization. That's a great model for us to follow. And the second aspect of leadership I want to show and talk about is something that is never practiced, at least in the immediate vicinity of many, many Rotary environments that I have seen. I'm talking about past RI President Kalyan Banerjee. If there is one thing that defines Kalyan's style of leadership, it is this. It's not my idea or your idea. It's the best idea that he wanted, always. It's not my idea or your idea or his idea. He was passionately searching for the best idea. And within that lies a whole world of leadership. It's about humility. It's about listening. It's about giving credit. It's about encouraging. And that is a great lesson for us to strengthen our clubs and strengthen leadership at the club level. It's the best idea that we need. It's not the president's idea or the board's idea, which also may be a good idea, but it's the best idea that we must be passionately committed to. And that's how we strengthen, I think, leadership at the club level. And I'll only say leadership is the most important requirement for Rotary today. Far more important than any funding or any projects we may be doing. Far more important. It's an existential crisis that we are in today. And in such a crisis, it's only leadership that matters. And that means discussion, inclusion, encouragement. And we need to have this whole approach to discussion and debate You know, there is a Sanskrit proverb which says, Vade Vade Jayate Tattva Bodha. We have this, we come as Indians, we come from a legacy of debates, starting from Shankaracharya onwards. Debate and discussion were the center point of our spiritual and temporal evolution, and we have lost it. The minute the ideas differ, the relationships break down, and we don't encourage discussion and debate. So we need to go back to both basics. And of course, Bhagavad Gita teaches us about discussion. Sarganamadir antascha madhyam chaivaham arjuna adhyatma vidya vidyanam vada pravadatam aham. So Krishna teaches us that I am the logical conclusion that arises out of debates. You see, that is our heritage. And I think we need to go back to our basic principles. So, it's a very tough time, but there are opportunities for us to strengthen ourselves individually and collectively. We need to rethink how we operate as a group. We can serve the community, I think, by serving ourselves. And we need to look inwards and see how we can support each other. And having said all that, can we do this informal survey? Can I have a thumbs up? It'll take you maybe 2 minutes. And what I'll do is I'll just copy the link and paste it. Just a minute. I will just copy this link and place it in the chat window here. Where is that? Can you see the link?
No. Yeah, yes. Now we can.
So just follow this. Go to the chat window, click the link. The survey form will open. Complete the survey by clicking your response and click submit. And can you see this screen now? Can you see a different screen?
Yes.
The responses?
Yeah, informal survey, the Google form is there.
Yeah, correct. So as the responses come in, you will see the whole thing evolving. And then we'll take it from there. Okay, the responses are beginning to come. Thick and fast. Eight responses in already. We'll give it a couple more minutes maybe. Can you all see the screen and see the responses coming in?
In the chat box, yes.
No,
No, we can't see your screen.
No, we can't see the screen.
how's it now?
No.
No.
No? Okay. Let me see.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we can see.
Now you can see. Okay.
18 responses.
We have 18 responses. And it's very interesting trend. Professor Raja, can you see it?
Yeah, yes, I can.
So far, out of 18 responses, we have got 40 participants now and 18 have responded. Is Rotary effective in serving the community during the current pandemic? Well, 72% say yes, but about 5 people or 26% say no. Now, very interesting about fellowship.
Yeah.
53 people have said fellowship has decreased. Look at the score for leadership at the district level. That's terrific.
6 and 7.
There's a spread, and the whole
Yeah.
score is clustered between 3 and 8.
That's
Shirish,
good.
any comments?
Hmm.
Shirish is a number cruncher, I know. And at the national level, hovering, I think how many? 3, 9, 12%.
It doesn't appear to be very inspiring leadership at both levels.
Right. That's the worry. That is the worry. And look at this, the last one. What does that tell us?
On
Oh,
democracy.
that's right.
The direct voting. Yeah.
I think learning the lesson here, I think this is a aspiration for more involvement of Rotarians, right? Rotarians want to be more involved. I mean, the floor is open. Or any of you can interpret.
I can comment on this, Madhav.
Go
See,
ahead.
Our, in my year as president,
Yeah.
there were a few candidates, and I wrote to the DG saying that please send us their CVs. Because my
Right.
view was if we can't involve every member of the club, at least the board should be involved, because the whole system was very funny.
Correct.
All clubs nominate a person, and we had some, I think in those days, 150 clubs. Then out of all those nominations, they meet, and then they draw lots where some people are picked up for voting.
That tells
Then
you the
the
story.
CVs are shared with only those people. So maybe 20 out of few thousand people, or a few hundred people at least, get to vote. And CV is only shared with them. So when I asked for the CV, in the whole district team, there was a lot of reggae is asking for CV of candidates. I said, we should be open about it. It should be discussed. Campaigning not being allowed, I understand, but it should be discussed in the board, and whoever the club nominates should vote on behalf of the club, not in his individual capacity, because he's not a repository of wisdom. And
That's
but
right.
we didn't get it. So that's what the process was, which was totally not acceptable.
So this is an idea that I have been sharing for at least 10 or 15 years. And earlier the concern was, how do you make sure that the election process is secure? But today, I mean, those concerns were valid even 5 or 10 years ago. But today, the secure online system is possible. Why not? Everything is
I
possible
agree.
today.
I agree.
And the other interesting thing is about fellowship. Now, does physical meeting require fellowship, or through this medium, fellowship? What is the implication for fellowship?
I would say that physical meeting doesn't require fellowship, but fellowship requires physical meeting. The reason for this is, if fellowship is a means to service where you build strong bonds between people, I don't think it happens through social media or online. It happens through person-to-person contact, quite often family contacts. So
True.
It's just like having friends on Facebook. When you really need them, no one comes.
Right. But now, here's the thing. If the pandemic is going to go on for another 1 year, we are not able to meet. What is the implication for the future of the club?
That's a short-term plan. We need to do a course correction, but that is only short-term.
Right. So there are implications, you see. So if now for 6 months or 1 year, we can't meet physically, what happens to our fellowship? What happens to the relationships? Are we likely to lose more Rotarians? Is retention going to be a problem?
Yes.
And these are things we've got to start thinking and reaching out.
I'm told that across the country, there are a lot of resignations. Even in our district, some 4 presidents backed out at the last minute. For people who are affected by the pandemic, their businesses are affected, earnings are affected. I think their first priority is their family and their businesses, and not Rotary.
And also, Shirish, and to everybody on this call, on this webinar, this aspect of fellowship, if you attach it with generally worrisome scores here, then retention is a problem and finding new members is going to be worse. So there are serious implications for us to think about. And how do we make a difference in this area? This is why I keep saying leadership is the basis for our survival. If we don't do something dramatic in this area, clubs will die, especially because of this area. Well, that's all I have to say. Professor Raja, would you like to interpret and anything you would like to say? And I mean, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for your patience, all of you. I know I've gone way beyond time.
Box.
Sure,
there are some
sure.
questions which I'll just ask.
Yeah.
Give
Right.
me a minute.
The first
Give me a,
go ahead.
the first question is GDP going further down, as now it is 24% down?
Yeah, so my own feeling is, I think that's the bottom of the V, as they call it. I think it'll start creeping up. And what can happen is the sectoral contributions can change. For example, today, when you have sectoral contribution, when I say sectoral contributions, I mean these 3 areas: agriculture, industry, and services. Manufacturing is industry, and the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. So today, agriculture is like 50, whatever, 40 or 50%. And services, I think, is about 20%. And the remaining is manufacturing. This mix can change
In favor of services.
in favor of services. In favor of the knowledge economy.
Knowledge economy. Yeah. The next question is about how do we get young professionals and entrepreneurs into Rotary? How do we attract youngsters into Rotary?
Okay, the answer is when somebody asks me, how do you create trust? My answer is very straightforward and clear. Be trustworthy.
Right.
So the answer is, if you want young professionals to join, then you must be an environment which is attractive to them. So when you say attractive, what does that mean? Less hierarchical, more open to questions and answers and discussion. Rapid ability to change rapidly. These are things which we are very poor at. We've got to change this very quickly. Then we'll attract Aslam Bhai. Then we will attract younger people.
I understand where you're coming from, because in Rotary we have a lot of kind of a baggage which doesn't allow us to make changes so quickly. So that is one factor that we need to really look at. Yes.
Peter Drucker once made a famous comment. He said a lot of the time traditions stand in the way of change. And if we are able to manage tradition while changing, that's a win-win situation. So we'll have to look at what traditions, identify all the traditions and say which tradition is preventing us from change and what change is that tradition preventing. If it's a positive change that the tradition is preventing, we've got to dump that tradition.
Agree.
So that's why I said there's a lot of thought required now for Rotarians. Instead of just doing, we need to step back a little bit and start thinking a lot more. Because after all, we are in a knowledge economy. This is the knowledge world.
I like your suggestion about having a think tank in Rotary, which can really start looking at long-term strategies rather than only looking at the day-to-day project that we do. Okay, the next question is, you talked about ERP like digital system for administration of a club. Has any club implemented this kind of a system in India? Is it
not as far as I know? Maybe RC, Rotary Club of Mumbai West, can be the first.
Oh, thanks.
Aslam will be the man. Aslam will be the man, techno man.
I have lots of ideas there. We can talk about it at some point. But it's not about implementing. It's about this. The minute we talk about these things, the leadership, their eyes glaze over and they say, "What's this guy talking about?" Nobody wants to listen. Because, you see, any change is scary. In many ways.
In the beginning, yes.
In the beginning.
To begin with, yes. But once you see the advantages, the benefits, people start accepting it.
Yeah.
There's a comment from one of our past presidents: we need to migrate to transparency and house cleaning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Transparency is something that's conspicuously lacking. And I think leadership, that's another aspect of transparency. Let me present a very different point of view. For as long as I can remember, we have said membership development is important. Expanding membership is important, right? Critically important. Haven't we heard this all the time in Rotary?
Yes.
I've been in Rotary for 36 years. And every year I'm listening to this,
Same thing. Yeah.
right? We have all heard that increasing membership is the most important thing. And yet the needle has not moved.
1.2 million.
The needle is there. Now, if you as a business or as an organization are the leader of an organization and your organization has not improved in the most important metric for 20 years, who is accountable? You get the answer. The leadership is accountable, isn't it?
Yeah.
So who is holding them accountable? You and I are continuing to work, continuing to sit quietly and let people become leaders, irrespective of their character, competence, commitment, and vision, right? And so the needle is remaining there.
We are all responsible.
So,
Okay, there are no
and
more
one of the
questions.
aspects is transparency. There is no transparency. That's another reason why the membership hasn't improved. So if we need to grow, we need to bring in all these big changes immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Madhamohan. Thank you so much for answering the questions patiently. I have exhausted all the questions. So back to President Manoj.
Thank you, Professor Madhav Mohanji. It was a enlightening presentation, thought-provoking. All of us will go on thinking. I don't know after thinking what will we do, but right now in a pandemic situation, we have at least that work to do. And if we think properly, whenever we are free and in pandemic, I think post-pandemic will be much better off. So you have given a good overview of a pandemic situation. Though, of course, nobody knows post-pandemic what is going to happen and when is that period of post-pandemic going to be, or most likely we are going to live with corona as we are living with TB, malaria, dengue, swine flu, everything. We are going to live with corona, and I think we'll get used to it gradually, and that will be a part of the society. So I think we'll have to deal with time as it comes and see whatever we can do and improve upon it.
Very true. Very true.